The sun hung low in the sky, casting an orange hue across the battlefield. The ground was soaked with blood, and the air smelled of smoke and metal. The clash of weapons echoed through the field, but amidst the chaos, there was one warrior who stood out among the rest. Her name was Zora, a fierce fighter from a distant planet, known for her courage and strength. She was not human but an alien with feline-like features, sharp ears, glowing eyes, and agile reflexes. Zora had fought in countless battles, but this one was different. The enemy was stronger than she had ever imagined. They were relentless, overwhelming her forces one by one. Her allies had already fallen, and now it was just her, facing a horde of enemies that seemed endless. Her heart raced, but her mind stayed sharp. She gripped her sword tightly, ready to meet her death. With every move, she could feel her strength waning. The enemy's attacks were too powerful, and she could sense the end drawing near. She knew this was her final battle. As the last of her energy drained away, Zora made one last charge, pushing through the enemies with everything she had left. But it wasn't enough. She felt the sharp sting of a blade piercing her side. The pain was intense, but she didn't cry out. She collapsed to her knees, her vision blurring as the world around her darkened. She closed her eyes, knowing this was it. Her heart slowed, and the battlefield faded from her senses. In that moment of darkness, something strange happened. Zora's body felt lighter, as though she were floating. The sounds of the war disappeared, replaced by a soft, unfamiliar hum. Her consciousness shifted, and when she finally opened her eyes again, she was no longer on the battlefield. She found herself lying in a soft bed, surrounded by strange glowing lights. The room was quiet, peaceful, nothing like the chaos she had just left. Zora tried to sit up, but a wave of dizziness hit her, making her fall back onto the pillows. Her hands touched the soft fabric of the bed, the sensation strange but comforting. Confusion washed over her. She looked around the room, her feline ears twitching. The walls were metallic, but the furniture looked entirely different from anything she had seen. It was a sleek, futuristic design, nothing like the ancient structures of her home world. She rubbed her eyes and tried to focus. She wasn't dead. But where was she? How had she gotten here? Then, she heard a sound, a door opening, footsteps. She turned her head slowly and saw a figure standing at the entrance. It was a human. A man, tall and muscular, dressed in what appeared to be futuristic armor. His expression was serious, but his eyes widened in surprise when he saw her awake. What are you? Zora asked, her voice hoarse from the battle. The man didn't answer right away. Instead, he took a step forward, his eyes scanning her face. He looked as though he had just seen a ghost. Zora's mind raced. How was she alive? What was going on? She couldn't remember how she had arrived in this strange place, nor why this human was staring at her as though he recognized her. Where am I? She asked again, her voice stronger this time, but still filled with confusion. Man hesitated before speaking, his voice low but clear. You're in my quarters. You were injured. We found you. You shouldn't be alive. Zora's heart skipped a beat. Injured? She muttered. But I died. The man took another step closer, his eyes never leaving her face. He appeared baffled by her words. You're alive, and that's all that matters. Zora stared at him, her mind struggling to process the situation. How was it possible? She had died on the battlefield. She should have been gone by now, her body lost to the war. But here she was, alive in a strange place, surrounded by unfamiliar technology. A million questions filled her mind, but for now, she knew one thing. She had to find out how and why she had ended up here. The war was over for her, but her journey was far from finished. Zora's mind raced as she lay back against the soft pillows. Her head was spinning with questions. The man, this human who had found her, who had saved her, seemed both confused and cautious. She could tell he wasn't used to seeing someone like her, an alien warrior with the features of a feline, sharp ears, glowing eyes, and the pale green skin of her kind. She was an outsider, a soldier far from home, and this place was nothing. Like the world she had fought for. The man stood at the foot of her bed, unsure of what to do next. Zora noticed the armor he wore, sleek, dark, and futuristic, with glowing lines that ran along its surface. It didn't look like anything she had seen before. Everything about him screamed that he was from a world far different from her own. She wondered how he had come to be here, in the same place she now found herself. "Who are you?" Zora asked again, her voice calm but still filled with curiosity. She needed answers. Her body ached from the wounds she had suffered in battle. But the confusion in her mind was the most painful thing now. The human man finally spoke, his voice deep and steady. "I'm Captain Rian. I'm part of a human force, part of a rescue mission. We're trying to survive on this planet." He paused, glancing around the room as though he wasn't sure how to continue. "We didn't expect to find someone like you, not alive at least." Zora's brows furrowed. "A rescue mission? This planet?" Her voice was filled with disbelief. She couldn't understand why humans would be on this world, especially after she had just witnessed their war efforts crumble before her eyes. Rian walked over to a table beside the bed and pressed a button, causing a small screen to light up with images of the planet's surface. The landscape was rugged, with towering mountains and thick forests. It was a far cry from the bustling cities of her home world. "This is Earth," he said, pointing to the screen. "We've been fighting to survive here for years. The war." He trailed off, his face tightening with frustration. "It never seems to end, but we're trying to rebuild. The mission to find allies was supposed to be our last chance." He turned back to Zora, eyes searching her face. "But we didn't expect to find you alive." Zora took in his words, piecing together the information. She remembered the last moments of her life on the battlefield. The war she had fought in wasn't hers to begin with. She was far from home. But Earth, this human world, was now her only chance for survival. "Why am I alive?" she asked, the question heavy on her tongue. "I saw myself fall. I should be dead." "But you're saying you found me, alive?" Rian hesitated before answering. "We think it has something to do with your species. The technology we've discovered on Earth suggests your race has abilities we didn't expect. When we found you, we couldn't just leave you. Not after everything you've been through. We took a chance." Zora's mind was still trying to make sense of it all. She had been left for dead on the battlefield, but here she was, in a strange place, surrounded by humans and their advanced technology. How had they found her? Why had they chosen to save her? "You don't understand," Zora said softly, more to herself than to him. "I wasn't supposed to survive. My people, they're gone. My war, my mission, it's all over." Rian's expression softened, and for a moment, she could see the flicker of empathy in his eyes. He stepped closer, carefully, as though not wanting to startle her. I think we both need to survive now, Zora. Whatever happens, we're not the enemy. We can help each other. We both need something to fight for." Zora looked at him, her eyes narrowing slightly. She was still unsure about trusting him, about trusting anyone. But as she glanced back at the screen showing Earth's vast alien landscape, she realized that maybe, just maybe, this was a chance for something new. A chance for survival, for a new purpose. "I don't know if I can trust you," she said slowly. "But if you're telling the truth, then maybe we have something in common after all." Rian nodded, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "We can figure this out together. One step at a time." Zora didn't know what the future held, but for the first time since the battle, she felt a flicker of hope. She had closed her eyes to die, but now, in this strange new world, she was being given a chance to live. And perhaps with this human, this unexpected ally, she could find a new purpose. She wasn't sure what would come next, but she was willing to find out. As the days passed, Zora adjusted to her new life in the human quarters. The first few hours had been filled with confusion and disbelief, but now, as the haze of shock began to clear, she was left with a mixture of curiosity and wariness. She was alive, but at what cost? The war she had fought in was no longer part of her reality, and the human world, so unfamiliar, now felt like her new battlefield. Rian had kept his word. He didn't push her for answers she wasn't ready to give. Instead, he quietly observed her, always respectful of her space. The days blurred together as Zora grew accustomed to the quiet hum of the human base, the soft glow of the lights, and the strange technology that filled every corner of the soft glow of the lights. The room. Every time she looked around, she saw something new, something more advanced than anything she had ever known. But the most unsettling thing was the absence of war. Earth was not like the planets Zora had known. Its people had been devastated by conflict, but now they were in a delicate period of rebuilding, and they were looking to survive. Zora often found herself standing in front of the large window in her quarters, gazing at the view of Earth's skyline. It was a beautiful sight, a stark contrast to the blood-stained battlefield she had known. The city's shimmering towers reflected the soft light of the setting sun, and below, the streets were bustling with human activity. She could hear faint sounds of their society below, yet the silence within the walls of the base was deafening. One afternoon, Rian appeared at her door with a tray of food in his hands. He set it down on the table beside her and took a seat across from her. "How are you feeling today?" he asked, his tone gentle but concerned. Zora glanced at the food but didn't immediately take it. She was still uncertain of the human customs. Her species didn't eat the same foods as they did, and she had always relied on her strength to survive rather than indulging in simple comforts. But something in Rian's eyes told her this was more than just a meal. It was an offer of kindness, of humanity. "I'm getting used to it," Zora replied, her voice quiet, her eyes not meeting his. She wasn't sure what to say. There was so much she wanted to know about him, about Earth, but she didn't want to seem weak. "What's it like here, in this place?" Rian leaned back in his chair, his hands resting in his lap. He studied her for a moment, as if contemplating the right words. "Earth wasn't always like this," he said slowly. "We've been through our own battles. We were divided, but the war changed everything. Now, all we have is each other. There's a unity we never had before." Zora's eyes narrowed slightly. She hadn't realized Earth had gone through such turmoil. She was used to fighting for survival, but hearing about this human struggle struck a chord deep within her. She could understand war, she could understand loss, but unity after such devastation? That was something she hadn't considered. "What about you?" she asked, finally looking up at him. "What keeps you fighting?" Rian didn't immediately answer. Instead, he looked out the window, staring at the skyline, as though he were searching for something that only he could see. "We fight to protect what's left," he said, his voice a little softer now. "To build something better for those who come after us, but I won't lie, it's hard. It's hard to keep hope when the world feels like it's already broken." Zora could sense the weight in his words. She could feel the pain and determination behind them. This human was carrying a burden, just like she had been. She understood that feeling all too well. The burden of survival, the pressure of finding meaning in a world that seemed lost. They sat in silence for a long moment, both contemplating their shared struggles. Zora couldn't help but notice the subtle shifts in her thoughts. She had come to Earth expecting to find nothing but death and darkness. But here, with Rian, she began to see something else, a glimmer of possibility. Before she could voice any of her thoughts, she felt something strange and unexpected pull, as though something deep inside her was reacting to her surroundings. Her ears twitched, and her heart began to race, her senses heightened. It wasn't fear. It was something else. Something she hadn't felt in a long time. Rian stood up suddenly, looking toward the door. "Stay here," he ordered, his voice firm. "I'll check it out." Zora's instincts flared up. She wasn't used to just sitting and waiting while danger approached. "What's happening?" she asked, her voice sharp. "I don't know yet," Rian said, his tone growing serious. "But we might have a problem." Without waiting for another response, he turned and left the room. Zora's heart pounded in her chest as she stood up quickly, her feline reflexes kicking in. She wasn't about to sit idly by and let whatever danger this was unfold without her. She followed Rian down the narrow corridors of the base, her eyes scanning for any sign of movement. Her senses were alert now, and she could feel that something was different. She could hear soft whispers, the faint sound of footsteps echoing through the halls. Her instincts told her something was coming, something big. Rian stopped at a control panel, tapping a few buttons. A map of the base appeared, showing areas of movement in various sectors. His fingers quickly moved over the screen, his brow furrowed in concentration. "They're here," he said, his voice tight. "We've got an intruder in the lower levels." Zora's eyes narrowed as she gripped the wall for balance. An intruder? Before Rian could respond, a loud crash sounded in the distance, followed by the unmistakable sound of gunfire. Zora's muscles tensed. Whatever it was close. And it wasn't just a human threat. The sounds of gunfire echoed through the base, growing louder with each passing second. Zora's ears twitched as she strained to listen. Her instincts, sharpened by years of battle, told her this wasn't just a routine intruder. This was something far more dangerous. Rian's face had grown tense, and his eyes darted across the control panel, his fingers moving with practiced speed. "We need to move now," he said, his voice tight with urgency. Zora's heart raced, but a calm determination settled over her. This was what she had been trained for: fighting, protecting, and surviving. The situation was unfamiliar, but her instincts had not failed her on the battlefield, and they wouldn't fail her now. She couldn't let fear hold her back. Rian didn't waste any more time. He grabbed a small weapon from a nearby rack and handed it to Zora. It was unlike anything she had ever seen before, small yet sleek, designed for precision. She took it without hesitation, her fingers wrapping around the cool metal of the handle. Her eyes met Rian's, and there was an unspoken understanding between them. "Stay close," Rian instructed. "We'll need to move fast." Zora nodded, and together they rushed down the darkened corridors. The base was silent now, the echoes of the gunfire fading into an ominous stillness. As they moved through the tight hallways, Zora couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Her feline senses tingled, every sound amplified, every movement sharp in her vision. Something was hunting them. They reached a narrow junction at the heart of the base, the lights flickering overhead. Zora could sense the tension in the air. Something wasn't right. She crouched low, her ears swiveling toward the far end of the corridor where the noises had originated. Suddenly, a dark figure appeared at the far end of the hallway. It was fast and naturally fast. Before Zora could react, the figure darted across the hallway, a blur of movement. Her instincts kicked in. Without thinking, she raised her weapon and fired. The blast hit its mark, but the figure didn't fall. Instead, it twisted in midair, dodging the shot with an agility that made Zora's heart race. The creature was unlike anything she had ever seen. It was humanoid in shape, but with a twisted, unnatural form. Its eyes glowed red, and it moved with an eerie speed that sent a chill through Zora's bones. Rian cursed under his breath and raised his own weapon. "What the hell is that?" Zora didn't answer. She was already moving, her reflexes faster than any human. The creature lunged at them, its claws gleaming in the dim light. Zora leapt into action, her feline agility allowing her to dodge the creature's attack. She twisted in mid-air and landed behind it, aiming her weapon at its back. With a quick pull of the trigger, another shot rang out, but the creature seemed to phase out of reality for a split second, disappearing and reappearing several feet away. It was as if it had the ability to teleport, to shift through space in an instant. "Damn it!" Rian shouted, stepping back, his weapon still aimed at the creature. "We're not dealing with just any intruder. This thing's not human." Zora's mind raced. This was no ordinary enemy. She had faced many opponents in her life, but this was something new. Something terrifying. The creature moved again, faster this time, charging at them with a growl that sent a jolt of fear through Zora. But she wasn't afraid. Not anymore. She had come here to fight, and now, in this strange world, her battle was far from over. Zora's claws extended, her body tensing as she prepared to strike. She dashed forward with a speed that almost rivaled the creature's, her weapon poised and ready. The creature lunged once again, but this time Zora was ready. She blocked its claws with her own weapon and with a swift motion, flipped it over her shoulder. The creature hit the ground with a heavy thud, its red eyes glaring up at her with a mixture of fury and hatred. It hissed and scrambled to its feet, preparing for another attack, but Zora was faster. She raised her weapon and fired once more, striking the creature in the chest. This time, it fell to the ground motionless. Zora didn't relax. She was still on high alert, her senses tuned to every movement, every sound. Rian stepped forward cautiously, his weapon still trained on the fallen creature. "What the hell is it?" Rian asked again, his voice shaky. Zora didn't answer immediately. She studied the creature's twisted form, her mind racing for an explanation. "It's not from this planet," she said slowly. "Whatever it is, it's something else." She glanced at Rian, who was still staring at the creature, his face a mixture of fear and disbelief. "This is just the beginning," Zora added grimly. "We've only scratched the surface." Before Rian could respond, the base's alarm blared to life, a loud, shrill sound that sent a shiver down both of their spines. The warning lights flashed red, and the walls seemed to pulse with an eerie energy. "It's coming," Zora whispered, her voice filled with urgency. The base had been breached. And this creature, whatever it was just the first of many. The hunt was far from over. The sirens blared relentlessly, their shrill sound filling the air with an unmistakable sense of danger. Red emergency lights flickered overhead as Zora and Rian sprinted down the narrow corridor, the urgency of the situation clear in every step they took. Behind them, the base was alive with chaos soldiers rushing to their posts, technicians scrambling to secure vital systems, and the growing buzz of panic among the few who had not yet fully grasped the severity of the situation. Zora's heart pounded as she moved swiftly, her senses on high alert. She could feel the pulse of the base beneath her feet, the vibrations of distant explosions reverberating through the walls. The creature they had just encountered, one of the mysterious intruders, was not an isolated threat. Zora knew that. The others were out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for their chance to strike. "Where are we going?" Rian asked breathlessly, his eyes darting around as they rounded a corner. "To the main control room," Zora answered without hesitation, her voice steady despite the mounting tension. "We need to secure the base's defenses. If we don't stop these creatures now, they'll tear this place apart." Rian nodded grimly, his grip tightening on his weapon as they pushed forward. The walls seemed to close in on them, the narrow hallways only adding to the sense of urgency. Zora's mind raced. She had fought on many battlefields before, but this was different. The humans had underestimated the true threat they were facing, and now it was up to her to help them survive. They reached the control room, and Rian quickly input the access code. The door slid open, revealing a room filled with screens and glowing control panels. The technicians inside were frantically typing commands into the computers, but there was an air of desperation that hung over them all. "What's the situation?" Rian demanded, his voice cutting through the panic. One of the technicians, a young woman with dark hair, turned to face them. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with fear. "Sir, we've detected multiple breaches in the lower levels. We don't know how many of them are down there, but we've lost contact with several key systems. The security measures are failing." Zora stepped forward, her gaze sharp. "The creatures are using advanced technology, aren't they? They can phase through walls and disrupt our communications." The technician nodded. "Yes, it's unlike anything we've seen before. We believe they're not just alien invaders. They're using some kind of cloaking technology." Rian cursed under his breath. "That's just great. We're dealing with an enemy that can vanish at will." Zora's mind began to piece together the puzzle. The creatures were not just invaders, they were something more. The way they moved, the way they attacked, and now their ability to cloak themselves. It was as if they were using technology far beyond what the humans had ever encountered. But why? Why were they attacking now? Zora turned to Rian, her eyes narrowing. "We need to know everything we can about them. How did they find us? What do they want?" Rian shook his head. "We don't know yet. But they're not here to negotiate. They're here to take over." The technician's voice trembled as she spoke. "Sir, we've detected more of them. They're in the upper levels now. They're moving fast. We can't hold them off much longer." Zora knew they didn't have much time. The creatures were getting closer, and soon the base would be overrun. The only option was to fight back hard. But they needed more than just weapons. They needed to understand their enemy. "We have to go after them," Zora said, her voice resolute. "We need to take the fight to them." Rian nodded, his eyes meeting hers. "All right, but how?" Zora thought for a moment, then turned to the technician. "Do you have any way of tracking their movements? Can we find where they're hiding?" The technician hesitated. "We have heat sensors, but the cloaking tech makes them nearly invisible to regular scans." "It's not perfect." "We don't need perfect," Zora said sharply. "We just need to know where they're heading next." The technician quickly began typing on the control panel, and within seconds, a map of the base appeared on the screen. Several red dots blinked across the map, indicating the locations of the intruders. "Here," the technician said, pointing to a cluster of dots in the lower levels. "They're converging on the main generator. If they disable it, the entire base will go dark." Rian's jaw tightened. "We can't let that happen. Zora, you and I will head down there. We'll clear a path." Zora gave a nod, her eyes steely. "I'm with you." Without another word, the two of them rushed out of the control room, making their way back toward the lower levels of the base. The air was thick with tension, and every step felt like a race against time. As they descended into the depths of the facility, Zora's mind sharpened, focusing on the task ahead. The creatures were getting closer, but she wasn't going to let them win. They reached the generator room, and Zora immediately saw the threat, a group of cloaked figures standing by the massive power core. Their red eyes glowed ominously in the dark, and Zora could feel the intensity of their presence, even before she saw them fully. "They're here," she muttered, barely audible. Rian readied his weapon, his expression hardening. "We'll take them down one by one." But as they prepared to move forward, Zora felt a surge of energy, a powerful, unnatural force radiating from the creatures. It was like nothing she had ever felt before. "Get ready," she whispered to Rian. "We're not just fighting for survival anymore. We're fighting to protect everything." In that moment, Zora knew that the battle wasn't just about stopping an invasion. It was about saving the future of Earth itself. Asterisk. The room was dark and cold, the hum of the massive generator filling the silence. The cloaked figures stood around it, their red eyes gleaming like dangerous embers in the night. Zora's heart raced as she crouched in the shadows, her feline senses heightened. Every fiber of her being was on alert, her muscles coiled and ready to spring into action. These creatures were not like anything she had ever faced before. They were fast, unpredictable, and wielding technology that made them nearly invisible. But she had learned to adapt. She had to, if she was going to survive this. Rian, standing beside her, kept his eyes on the enemy. His jaw was clenched in concentration, and his weapon was raised, ready to strike. He didn't speak, but his presence was a steady force next. To her, she could feel his determination, his will to protect this place, this world. And in that moment, she realized that the fight they were about to face wasn't just about surviving. It was about forging an unlikely alliance between two worlds. The creatures were still unaware of their presence. Zora's mind raced as she formulated a plan. There were at least 5 of them around the generator, their movements synchronized. They weren't just invaders, they were precise, tactical, like soldiers. But Zora was used to thinking on her feet. She was no stranger to quick decisions and fast combat. "We move on my count," Zora whispered to Rian, her voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through her. "I'll take the one on the left. You take the right." Rian nodded silently, his eyes locked on the creature nearest to him. He wasn't a warrior by birth, but his resolve was unmistakable. Together they had a chance. Zora inhaled deeply, her feline senses alert to every sound, every shift in the air. Then, with a flash of movement, she leapt forward, her powerful legs propelling her into action. She moved with lightning speed, closing the distance between herself and the nearest creature. Her weapon was poised, and as she reached it, she struck, her blade slashing through the air in a perfect arc. The creature barely had time to react. Zora's strike landed with precision, and the figure collapsed, its body disappearing into a blur of energy as it disintegrated. But there was no time to celebrate. As she moved to face the next target, a sharp metallic screech echoed through the room. The other creatures were not so easily defeated. One of them turned to face her, its glowing red eyes locked onto hers. It snarled, its form flickering in and out of existence as it attempted to vanish into the shadows. Zora's instincts kicked in, and she fired a quick burst from her weapon, striking it in mid-phase. The creature let out a hiss of pain, its form materializing fully for just a moment before it collapsed to the ground. Rian moved in sync with her, his weapon blasting one of the remaining creatures that had been about to charge at Zora. The energy from his weapon hit the target with a blinding flash, causing the creature to stagger back before crumpling into the floor. But the battle wasn't over. Another figure stepped forward, larger and more menacing than the others. It was the leader, the one controlling the others. It glared at them with an intensity that sent a shiver down Zora's spine. Its presence was overwhelming, a force of nature that seemed to crackle with dark energy. "You think you can stop us?" The leader hissed in a voice that reverberated through the room. It spoke in a language Zora didn't understand, but its meaning was clear. This was no ordinary enemy. This was something far more dangerous. Zora's grip tightened on her weapon. "We're not here to stop you. We're here to end this." With a growl, the leader lunged at her with lightning speed, its claws extending like blades of pure destruction. Zora dodged the first strike, but the force behind the attack sent a shockwave through the air, knocking her off balance. She rolled quickly to her feet, just as the leader came at her again. Rian moved to help, but Zora waved him off. "Stay back. This one's mine." Zora's eyes narrowed. She wasn't afraid. She had faced death many times before, but this time, it was different. This time she had something to fight for. She had a reason to survive. The leader swung again, and Zora parried the attack, her weapon clashing with its claws. The force of the strike sent sparks flying, but Zora held her ground. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for Rian, for the humans, and for the future of this world. She could feel the weight of her responsibility. With a roar, Zora moved in, her speed blurring as she ducked beneath the leader's swing and slashed upward. Her strike was swift, her claws extending with deadly accuracy. The leader's red eyes widened in shock as Zora's blade cut through its armor, piercing its chest with a force that sent it stumbling back. The creature fell to its knees, its form flickering one last time before it vanished in a burst of energy, leaving nothing but silence behind. Zora stood over the fallen enemy, breathing heavily, her body sore from the fight. But the battle was won. Rian approached her cautiously, his weapon still in hand. "Is it over?" he asked quietly. Zora looked around the room, her sharp eyes scanning for any remaining threats. The generator hummed softly, undisturbed now. The base was safe for the moment. "It's over for now," she said, her voice calm but filled with the weight of what had just transpired. "But they'll be back, and we'll be ready." Rian nodded solemnly, but a faint smile tugged at the corners of his lips. "You were incredible out there. I've never seen anyone fight like that." Zora met his gaze, her eyes softening slightly. "I fight to survive, and to protect what's important." The two of them stood there for a moment, the weight of their shared struggle hanging in the air. Zora had closed her eyes to die, but now, standing in the heart of this strange new world, she realized that her battle wasn't over. It had only just begun, and she wouldn't face it alone.